Got to go to jail about this spoon store. Ain't all that food isn't going to every day life about her. It's all I want in this creation, it I go home, wanna fight about her. God to dying, we're in Hot Springs, dead about her. Dead women going crazy, every day they lie about her. Will you kill a man, baby? Yes, I will. Dead about her.
I can't get enough of Charley Patton. I could listen to him 24 hours a day and never get tired of it. He's fascinating, and the power that still, I remember Wolf saying that was his hero, you know, and when you think about it, Wolf is really like just a natural extension of Charley Patton.
One of my favorite ways to talk about the blues links is to quote B.B. King, who stood basically where we're standing right now. And the quote is, in the film Good Morning Blues, the quote is, "If you had to choose one place where the blues began, you might say it all started right here." And he goes on, he says, "Son House played here, Willie Brown played here, and here at Dockery was another blues musician, and he was Charley Patton, the father of the Delta Blues." And that's pretty much the reason that many people consider Dockery Farms to be the birthplace of the Mississippi Delta Blues.
He was kind of an anomaly because he was an extremely mixed race guy, you know, part Native American, part white, part of African descent, and partly maybe even of East Asian origin. He was a little guy about 5, 6, 7 with a sort of coppery complexion and wavery coppery hair. And he was apparently a great entertainer. He would do the kind of things with his acoustic guitar that the likes of T-Bone Walker and Jimi Hendrix would later, and Chuck Berry would later do with electric guitars, play behind his head, pretend to ride the guitar like a mule, all this kind of stuff.
Charley Patton was very much known for his showmanship, and he did sort of set the stage for Hendrix. He did play the guitar behind his back. He bit it. He threw it in the air and spun it at the end of songs. And he was well known for that. I mean, it was part of the act that he put on.
Everybody was impressed with Charley Patton. I mean, he was something. He really left an impression. And a lot of the musicians that had seen him, well, like Pop Staples was learning guitar from Charley Patton. Wow, ain't that something? He was a huge influence. And again, he's another one of those guys that maybe it sounds simple, but you try to play it. I mean, it sounds tough, and it just makes me feel good.
Well, Charley Patton definitely influenced Howlin' Wolf, who lived, at least for some period of time, on a neighboring plantation and undoubtedly came here. He certainly influenced Muddy Waters and Robert Johnson. I mean, they were younger, all three of those were younger than Patton and were influenced by him. And of course, they went on to influence the Chicago blues, and that in turn influenced British rockers and was reintroduced to the United States during the British invasion in the 60s. So that's all sort of bringing it full circle, actually, and reintroducing the blues to many Americans who never heard Charley Patton.
I ever get back home, I won't be back no more.
The story is that Dockery Farms was founded as it says right up here, in 1895, when Will Dockery came here. At that time, this place was wilderness. It was covered by huge trees and square-mile patches of cane brakes, and it was seasonally flooded. Shortly after Will Dockery bought this property, within a couple years, the Patton family was recruited. Charley Patton's father was a fairly famous and successful sharecropper and farm boss, and the family came here. Charley Patton was a very young man at the time, a child, and grew up here and lived here for the early part of his life. And he learned from various other people how to play the blues, but he's the one that we have recordings of, so he's the one that gets the credit for being the father of the Delta blues.
So the most rootsy part of Patton's work was this early one-chord stuff, and you can hear echoes of these songs much later in subsequent generations. Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin. So I'll go back to that one-chord blues here, and then I'll evolve it slowly.
I'm gonna buy myself a penny, put 'em in my backyard, mama. I'm gonna buy myself a penny, put 'em in my backyard. Now when a stranger come in, he'll fly his wings and grow.
So go just a little bit later, you get, well, I'm rolling tumble, cry the whole night long. And I'm rolling tumble. Now I'm going to go a little later and put the chord change in. Well, I'm rolling tumble, cry the whole night long. Now you're up to Muddy Waters. Rolling tumble, I cried the whole night long. That's also Robert Johnson as well.
I'm gonna buy me a penny, put him in my backyard.
At one point, the population on Dockery's plantation swelled to approximately 2,000 people. Its key business was cotton, and the equation worked out at 1 man and 1 mule per 10 acres. Dockery's was, in fact, a town, a company town. But unlike a town, everything was owned by the Dockerys. There was a doctor's office, a school, 3 churches, and of course, an enormous blacksmith shop and barns for the mules.
This plantation was founded close to 30 years after the Civil War, so the workers who were recruited here may have been born as slaves, or they may have been first generation after slavery. And that's pretty much the story in 90% of the Delta. Now, 10% of the Delta was founded before the Civil War, and there were slave plantations here in the Delta. But the land we're on right now was swamp wilderness at that time, and was settled almost a generation after the Civil War.
What you are when I hit wolf, can't go with easy. What you are when a woman want to nothing I say. I take my picture, hang up a Jackson wall.
It was, in those regards, typical of a large plantation. In a couple other ways, it was atypical. For instance, there was a ticket agent here, and you could buy a ticket and get on the Peavine Railroad and basically travel to any place in North America, changing trains. The Peavine Railroad crossed the main Illinois Central line in Boyle, which is just a few miles away. And there was a telegraph office, of course, a gin for stripping the lint off of the cottonseed, a totally integrated operation, a commissary that for some period of time used its own currency, not only brosine, which is what they called the coins, but also dollar bills or scrip, Dockery dollars. times changed. The agricultural equation today is 1 man and 1 tractor per 1,000 acres. And with the advent of mechanization, all those field hands were either liberated or terminated, depending on your point of view, and historians have taken both points of view. And they basically left the rural parts of the Delta, moved into town, moved to places like Clarksdale, and from Clarksdale on north to Memphis, and from Memphis to St. Louis and Chicago and Detroit, and they took the blues with them. Well, Dockery obviously played a role in songs like the Peavine Railroad blues. I mean, the Peavine Railroad started here and was partially constructed by the Dockery family, actually. Pony Blues, Boll Weevil, I mean, they're all songs about the Delta, but they're things that Charley Patton encountered here at Dockery. And he encountered them at a early age. I mean, he was growing up here as a young man, and so they affected his whole outlook.
Don't believe I'm leaving, count the days and gone. Don't believe I'm leaving, count the days and gone.
Bluesmen came in different shapes and sizes. I mean, there were some, like Muddy Waters, that did farm and eventually got tired of farming and left for Chicago, taking the blues with them. There were others that dabbled a little bit with the church and then gave it up occasionally. Son House, I think, did that. Then you've got people like Charley Patton, who were pretty much professional bluesmen. Robert Johnson was the same thing. They were analogous to rock stars of their day. Honey Boy Edwards has said that when he was playing with Robert Johnson, he could make as much money in one night of performance as a field hand could make in an entire week of hard labor. Now that sounds like a lot, but he's talking about $5. And that $5 didn't last very long. I mean, it did allow the bluesmen to travel around, ride the Peavine Railroad. It allowed the bluesmen to buy some nice clothes and some beverage, some whiskey, and impress the ladies. But the $5 was gone pretty quickly, and so I don't think they ever had much in the bank. They did have spending money.
One of the common misconceptions about early blues singers is that because we only know their recorded work, we assume that they only sang blues. In fact, Charley Patton and his contemporaries would have had a rich and varied repertoire of material.
So it's very hard to know just what any given representative of that music making actually did in his or her working life for repertoire. Was it just the stuff we've got on record, and if so, in what proportions? Was there anybody, say in 1927, who was a career blues singer? I think it's very unlikely that there was. There were career black musicians, street musicians, people who went around in medicine shows and sort of latter-day minstrel shows, people who played for house parties and local social functions. But they would have played what people wanted to listen to, and the evidence increasingly suggests that this was not a long list of songs ending in blues in each case, such as we have in their discographies. It would have been a much more mixed repertoire, including a lot of songs which were not recorded because other people had already recorded them, because they were standards, because they were boring. Nobody wanted Furry Lewis's version of Some of These Days when Sophie Tucker and who knows how many other people had done it. It was old material. Great for the people who were listening to him at a chicken supper or a fish fry. That was, something they were familiar with. They'd like to hear the local musician do it. But there was no way in the world that Furry Lewis is going to record that. And if he went along to a session in the mistaken impression that that's what the recording people wanted, they would have said no. They did. We have plenty of evidence of people telling us this. They said, no, what we want is new material. Haven't you got any blues of your own? Haven't you got any new songs? The impetus was always, give us something that we haven't already got in catalogue. And that instantly gives us it creates a huge risk of misinterpreting entirely the evidence of what we got, because we don't know how far that evidence really tells us anything about the repertoires, the working day by day, week by week repertoire of this musician or that.
I'm one away to Walana. I'm one away to Walana. I'm Walana, but I won't be one long.
And he's also singing these sort of vaudeville type songs along with the blues material. So absolutely pivotal figure in that he comes out of this pre-recording age and takes the music into, although he's not the first, obviously Blind Lemon Jefferson has recorded before him, but he's really one of the very early pioneers in taking music out of the pre-recorded era into the age of recording.
I highly recommend for Patton, for example, if you listen to Moon Going Down, Bird Nest Bound, High Water Everywhere Part 1 and 2, Revenue Man, Love My Stuff, is about 8 or 9 songs that are basically based off of that. And his little variations are so creative. So, for example, he played it right side up, he played it upside down, he played it this way, and he played that offset where he'd go 3, 4, 1, offsetting it that way. Even this little lick, sometimes it was, other times you would turn that into the turnaround. And this really gives you an insight into the creativity of the musicians.
His music is absolutely primal Delta blues. You cannot find on record earlier examples of what the Delta blues of the 20s could have sounded like. There were earlier bluesmen recorded, but they were from elsewhere. Charley Patton was where the Delta blues starts. Songs like Pony Blues, and I think it was High Water Everywhere. The one of many accounts of the of the flood, of the great flood that virtually sank the Delta.
The black water out on the roads around some love throw me down that line. Black water don't roll right down the road, pull Charlie down that line. And I tell that water, don't jump through this town.
You have to put that with Bessie Smith's Backwater Blues and John Lee Hooker's Tupelo as an example of how the blues fulfilled that documentary function of saying what was going on in the lives of people to whom the majority culture in America, read white, was paying absolutely no attention except on the basis of find out what they're doing and make them stop.
I think of Patton as a guy that was down there, like closer to the source. I mean, the original way blues was played. He wasn't a guy that, I mean, he was playing for farmhands and things on plantations. Johnson was a guy that was, you know, you see him dressed in these, you know, three-piece pinstripe suit, and he's like thinking, he's another generation, he's more modern. He's like comparing Little Walter to John Lee Williamson or something. This guy's moving ahead in a different direction. He's just as soon not be stuck on the plantation. And Charley Patton is a direct result of that environment, of that time, of the beginning of blues. And that's like it's about as close to the source as you can get.
Here's a little boy, we will keep moving in this Lordy.
Although people argue about whether there is an overemphasis on the Mississippi Delta as the source of the blues, there is no denying that in the recorded material we possess, you can feel the influence of the Mississippi in almost every song.
Well, there is an enormous influence of the place of the Mississippi Delta on the blues. And in fact, I personally feel that much of the Delta blues is a representation of the place. I mean, it's talking about the place physically, it's talking about the heat, the hard work, the mules, the cotton. It's talking about the place metaphysically in terms of the devil and Mojo and the church and God, a God who seems to, in many cases, have turned his back on the bluesmen, or certainly on the field hands. And it's talking about the place sociologically, too. It's talking about how no good deed goes unpunished, how the power is all in somebody else's hands. In some cases, it's downright protest. You know, I mean, Big Bill Brunzi's "When Will I Be Called a Man," you know, is a classic protest song, but it's still listenable blues music as well. And so to me, all of those things combine to influence the blues. It couldn't have come from someplace else. It came out of the cotton fields. It came out of walking behind a mule. It came out of living a sharecropper's life and coming to settlement time and not making any money. All of those things contributed.
Charley Patton was where it all begins. You know, all of this stuff we're talking about. You know, it's you have, as far as what's on record that you can actually hear and refer to, you have to start with Charley Patton. There's nowhere else to go.
Don't make me mad, baby. All I want my baby. I'm full about that. Look here, honey. I need that. Every man living in town. Some these men, I know they are tired of. Baby, I'm sticking around here. They ain't got me no.